Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Teclis in Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires. And what I want to talk about is how Creative Assembly has vastly improved his campaign from where it was before with the release of the Tides of Torment DLC and more importantly, the High Elven rework. Two separate things, because the DLC is one thing, the rework is another thing, because the rework is available to everyone. Yes, we wouldn't have the rework if not for the DLC, but that's a whole discussion in its own right. Regardless, Teclis has always been in a weird spot as a Legendary Lord, because if we look back at Warhammer 2, his entire campaign dynamic, because of the climate situation, and his starting position in Warhammer 2, was based around him dealing with the jungle. And on top of that, he has a bunch of benefits with Order-tied factions. Crucially, for Warhammer 2, it was with the Lizardmen. It didn't work out because the Vortex forced everyone to fight each other, including Lizardmen fighting High Elves, and vice versa. So the entire campaign dynamic from the very beginning of his introduction always left something to be desired. Now, what has changed in this specific campaign? Well, first off, one of the important things is that now when you gain control over your initial province, and I would recommend actually leaving Dawn's Light for the second settlement, so that way you don't have to go back around, so you can go deal with Kairos. Once you take control of an initial province, you gain a good amount of scrolls of knowledge, and you take the settlement, you gain control of the province, and then you get a choice. You can either return to Ulthuan with Teclis, which gives you, which costs more scrolls of knowledge, pretty much all that you've gained, gives you Confederation and diplomatic relations with High Elves. You can ignore going back to Ulthuan, or you can just confederate Safari. I would recommend going for the Confederation of Safari from my perspective, but the decisions are available. Like, you can teleport Teclis if you think he's going to be needed over there in Ulthuan. You can just ignore Ulthuan for a while and rely on the Racial Confederation, especially with Alariel, in order to gain control of Safari. Truth be told, you might want to sell Safari anyway to Alariel regardless, or to Tyrion, really. Because the benefits with respect to that are going to be you gain a lot of money, they get to build up the province, everyone pretty much wins. That is one of the big benefits when we are talking about the campaign now. Also, the thing about confederating Safari, however, is that you now get vision with the other High Elven factions, the major players. So that means, because of Teclis' inherent diplomatic benefit, you can just go to these factions and declare war on their enemies and get a good amount of money in the process. That can be incredibly useful early on in a campaign to get you going. And that's without, again, considering any kind of region trading that you might wish to engage in this specific campaign. Also, by the way, taking the settlement first allows you to build a barracks on turn 1 while demolishing the one that you start in the Fortress of Dawn, so you can get the Elven Gardens to get access to a noble. And what you want to do as well, one of the reasons you want that money is because you want to get all of the research over here. I would say the more important one is really getting access to spy networks, because it gives you that kind of region visibility, and that's also more money through declarations of war. But there's all kinds of things here that are useful. Like, I've chosen Waystone Network, but you can go with Heralds of Civilization, give you construction costs for ports, construction time for ports, growth, etc. So there are some really nice benefits. I'm sure Creative Assembly's thought process with regards to that was, okay, people are just going to take their time. Why would we take our time? There's absolutely no reason whatsoever for us to take our time in any way, shape, or form. That is a factor that shouldn't be ignored. And yes, you do start with, you will have an army, a small one over here in Safari. I would probably recommend actually just dismissing this army or getting an Archmage Lord. Once you have, again, the money for it, building a force, helping Tyrion take the Shrine of Cain, or the Shrine of Assyrian, going to deal with Kairos. Because getting into Dawn's Light will allow you to reach over for this port right here, which Kairos is heading towards. You might ignore the faction of Nurgle, but you can take this port settlement, land over there, maybe fight Kairos there, maybe not. But either way, your army is capable of defeating Kairos, and then you combine that with the ability of using the Invocation of Isha, which gives you casualty replenishment and immunity to attrition. You're in at least a good enough position to settle the score with Kairos and then deal with the minor faction siege. And then what you do after that is your decision. Now, beyond those aspects, Teclis, well, remains Teclis. Is a bit frustrating that the Scroll of Hoeth can only be gained by fighting 2 battles against Siege, but you don't start with this quest, you only gain it after turn 1. Bit frustrating means that the item is a bit later to the party, and means that you do have to go after Kairos or leave the initial faction of Siege alive for an extra turn, which not necessarily best. Otherwise, things have remained the same. I kind of wish they had given him Fiery Convocation, not as a bounce spell, but as a proper spell, but it is 2 usage. It is useful, but yeah, having it as a proper spell as opposed to just spamming Chain Lightning and Flock of Doom might have been the better path. Otherwise, the skill line has not been changed. Well, a couple of minor things here and there, but for the most part, it has remained the same. But really, the big benefit is, of course, that kind of confederation, and also being able to gain control of the Illyrian Seed, because that gives you extra campaign movement range, and also you can aim for Alarial Seed, because you only need to gain Alarial Seed, Avalorn's Patronage, and rank 5 Favor of the Phoenix King in order to confederate Alarial, so your presence in Ulthuan can be secured. Of course, the climate is always going to provide some limitations, and you are going to be fighting climate. You are going to be fighting in the jungle, especially when you consider the kind of victory conditions that you do have. Now, you could be aiming, of course, to confederate Aislinn if you're playing this. I'm not sure what happens if you don't have the DLC. Now, beyond that, the main change to Teclis, beyond the inherent benefits he gets from the High Elf rework, have to do with the secrets of the White Tower. You have 5 chambers. The Chamber of the High Loremaster, Chamber of Brilliance, Chamber of Being, Chamber of Oblivion, and Chamber of Darkness. The way these chambers work is that you have single-use actions. So, depending on the chamber you're talking about, you're going to get recruit rank +4 for certain mages and archmages of specific schools of magic. That's one of the things. The other thing that we're looking at is Winds of Magic cost for certain spells. And then some other things that we do get is either a mage that you can recruit with certain very specific traits, though I would say administrator is still better. But obviously, you know, barrier HP for high elf melee infantry is not something to joke on, for instance, or mastery of elemental winds. But yeah, either way, there are some really, really powerful mages over here, and it also increases your mage capacity for mage heroes. So that is a pretty big deal. So it means you can have a lot of mages. I think Gelt gets more mages, but, well, on one hand, you don't have the same mages that Gelt has. On the flip side, you have them higher ranked, and I think the traits overall are better because you can kind of choose what traits you're going to go for. Then, in terms of repeatable actions, it's either going to be Cataclysm spells like Mage Storm, Ashes and Dust, all those kind of things that are available, at least from the Chamber of the High Loremaster. But then there's other things. Replenishing Winds of Magic, Miscast Base Chance, certain army ability, okay. And then the crucial one I would say is the Chamber of Being. So when you look at the Chamber of Being, yes, you do have your Cataclysm spells, right? But then you can also, with a 2-turn duration right there, you can replenish campaign movement range, and it has an 8-turn cooldown on it. This can be extremely useful, in particular early on in a campaign, when you're dealing with the movement penalty over here in the Southern Chaos Wastes. So I would really focus on the discipline of the Wild Kin, maybe Invocation of Resilience potentially. Obviously some other things like depleting Winds of Magic, or enemy army being tired, or the next hero action, or reducing battle healing cap, they're all very useful. So Teclis is a much more powerful spellcaster, at least on a faction-wide level. I do think he should have been more powerful himself, because he has a lot of Winds of Magic, but the kind of issue he has is the spells he personally has, I would not necessarily say they're extremely good. I mean, he can do a lot of damage, but it's more like, okay, here we go into a battle, 20 minutes, spamming Flock of Doom or Chain Lightning, you do win. Don't get me wrong, you do win. You decimate your opponents, but it's that specific dynamic. Another thing I would have wanted personally with Teclis is an improvement in climate. Okay, to be fair, there has been some improvement. If I'm not mistaken, before the Tides of Torment DLC, Khemri Nehekara was not suitable climate, so now you can go fight in the Thunderdome of Khemri. Well, I suppose that is an option if one wants to seek it, but it does work out. Is it really the best campaign path? I'll let you guys decide on that. For my part, I think dealing with Kairos is a must-have just to eliminate the annoyance of Tzeentch. And then securing an alliance with Oxyatl, what you do after that point is really your decision with respect to that. I think there are multiple ones, like you could go conquer some of the elven colonies that Aesland has, because one of the things to mention when we're talking about the Confederation with Aesland is that you need to control free elven colonies. Well, guess what about that aspect? 2 of these elven colonies are controlled by the United Maritime Patrol. Now, these are not allied. This faction is not allied with Aesland. So you can take 2 of it free and then get Confederation with Aesland is a bit hilarious. Just pointing out there. I think it makes sense why CA did that. They wanted to give Aesland a province that was really good as a bedrock of his campaign. Just what ended up happening is that when you're not playing Aesland and you're playing another high elf, you have every incentive in the world to just basically conquer 2 of those 3 regions, get a third somewhere else, and then confederate Aesland. Or really, you could just confederate Teclis, and then from Teclis, go to Aesland, and get that confederation going. Just worth pointing out. So it's better as a campaign. You do have a lot more tools. You do benefit from the improvements in terms of like having handmaids recruitment at tier 3. Especially because of Alariel. Like, capacity will only increase at tier 4, but then you have to consider that Alariel can give you a bunch of handmaids when you confederate her. So having handmaids tier 3 means that you will be able to really recruit them easier. Like, you can get 1, then confederate Alariel. You hope she has a bunch of them recruited already, so you end up with 1 or 2 extra, or maybe even more, depending on how her lore skill line has been set up. Get a lot of mages, and also there's a landmark in Aesland's territory that gives you Loremaster recruitment, if I'm not mistaken. So if we look at Aesland's situation, yes, it is a bit of a slog, but there is this landmark which gives you hero capacity for Loremasters and hero recruitment for Loremasters. So not something to be ignored. Yeah, again, bit of a slog, bit of a distance, but very, very much worth it. I guess that's the one downside of Teclis' campaign. There's a lot of things that are great that you can reach, but it's going to take you a while. Like, even dealing with the Skaven over here, it's like a bit of a jump over here to get to the Caverns of Sotik. Either way, that's all I had to say. Is it a campaign that I personally enjoy? Not quite. Do I think he's a much better Legendary Lord than he was before? Absolutely. Still prefer a Leaf and R, but that's my personal preference. Go see and sign out.